Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. I'm joined by my partner in crime, who joins us in the dirty South. Brock joins us now from, where are you? Winter Park, Florida?
Yeah, down in Florida.
Nice, nice. So I'm anxious to get your, I know you've been to the South before, but I'm anxious to get your perception, your interactions. What was Sumter, South Carolina like?
Okay, small town, rural South Carolina.
Sure.
We we got a flat tire outside of Sumter, South Carolina, and had the most helpful experience of Southern hospitality that you could ever get as we limped on our rims off of 95 into a gas station. Everyone wanted to help us. We got all kinds of AAA was there in like 3 minutes. We got advice on where to go. We got into a tire shop. We were in and out within 2 hours. We thought we were going to be stuck for the day.
Right.
And it was incredible. And it just like hit us over the head with like how nice people can be when they want to be. And yet
Ah,
we're sitting there wondering, all these people treating us so great. Like,
right,
like why these people are probably also then voting red, right?
right,
And hate immigrants, hate black people, probably would have hated if they knew that I was Jewish, hate, any kind of others and the foreigners, but the capacity to be so kind was there. And yet in the back of my head, I knew that probably I was getting treatment that I
right.
wouldn't get if I looked different. And
It's,
and we happen on the rental, we happen to have Kentucky plates, which probably helped.
oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if we had our New York plates, if we would
Might
have
have been
had
a
some
different
comments coming
story.
our way. I just don't know. So that was one interesting dynamic of this trip. And the other one was in Sumter when we ordered in. I did a takeout, went to a restaurant, and the restaurant was entirely integrated, fifty
Right.
50, black and white when I looked around the room. Yet none of the tables themselves had any integration, right? It was literally a table of black people, table of white people. And as we've started this podcast and are talking about these issues more and more, and whether
Yeah.
the nation, the country's ability, and certainly we focus on the left's ability to talk about these like living room issues of why can't people sit in a living room together and
Right.
talk and cross
Right.
pollinate, and why is there such an otherness amongst people who live amongst each other? Yet we
Yeah.
still have these huge barriers. And maybe I'm more cognizant of it because we've been talking about it every day. And maybe
Right.
being in the South, I was leaving looking for it a little bit more, but it's probably not that
Right.
different than where I'm living either. But so anyway, that's been the interesting. It's only been a day and a half.
That's awesome. So it's been interesting living down here now for almost 17 years we've been in Atlanta. And the only other southern place we lived is Texas for a couple of years. But I didn't get out much in Texas. Um, so I've had the best of both, like the best and the worst of people. And I've seen both sides. And I too, like you, am puzzled why people choose, to be mean and nasty, right? Like, why can't we just have a conversation? For example, last week on the pod, I told you about the young lady who elderly white woman walked up to me and said, "Hey, friend, you have a great day now." And I said, "All right, girlfriend, you do the same." But she chose to be a friend. And it all started with an accidental wave, right? And then I remember Christmas 2003. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was going up to the mall in Alpharetta, very affluent part of town, and I was buying one of those things you put your luggage in on your roof rack. It opens up, you throw your bags in. We had a couple hockey bags. We were going to a tournament the next day down. And, and I was like, lady, it's Christmas Eve. Like, chill out. Like, I didn't even see you. And I come out of the store, out of the Sears at the time, it hadn't closed yet. The lady's standing out there talking to the police officer and trying to get me arrested. So I double back into the store. I call my wife. She's the prosecutor in that town at the time. And I said, hey, if I get linked up here, you guys are gonna have to probably go to the tournament without me, but make sure you get me out of jail first. I said, because tomorrow's a holiday. Nobody's having court tomorrow.
It,
But
it's truly
I've
amazing.
seen the best
Yeah.
of both, and the worst of both, right? And it's so sad. And again, because my parents grew up in the segregated South, but they didn't teach us, to hate people based on what they look like. My dad used to say, jerks come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And he believed that. And I believe that he believed that, even after when his baseball team used to drive through the South. He went to a little small college in Raleigh called Shaw University. And they would have to pull up to the back of the restaurant to get food, and they wouldn't be allowed to eat in the restaurant. They'd have to brown bag it and take it with them. They wouldn't be allowed to use the bathroom. If they didn't have a colored bathroom, they couldn't go potty there. So it was it was a different experience. And my parents both came north looking for work and opportunity because they thought, the perception was that the north was more open. And it happened to be for them, in their particular professions, social work and education. So they were able to, put a nice life together for me and my brother.
But we're marching backwards on these topics right now. We got this War Powers Act, and we're just
Right,
deporting people if they don't look right, or they've
right,
somehow, they're in the wrong group. They're either getting shipped to El Salvador, or they're getting, knocks on the door in New York City, right? Columbia University. They're clearing out
right.
professors who maybe were considered to be somewhat sympathizers to some protests, which, by the way, we're allowed to protest in this country, but that association, it's kind of like, right, the McCarthy era, Red Scare, right? Like there's no due process. People are just getting deported without any due process, either detained or deported without any due process. So
Right.
that's, I kind of thinking that as I drive through the South. And the other thing that was hitting me is like these, we were getting hit with these rainstorms yesterday. And on the news the whole way down, there's tornado watches, and there's all this talk about all the devastation that had happened in sort of the Southwest that was working its way east. And we got hit with huge rainstorms, but luckily no tornadoes.
Hmm.
But it got me to thinking, like, is FEMA still on the case? Are any of these houses going to be able to be rebuilt? Because can anyone get insurance anymore? Does any Do we have the facilities in place to forecast the weather anymore? Are we even tracking it, or is NOAA so hamstrung that we're not getting as good information and never will again because we've defunded these, all these things wrapped together? And these are just like negatives that we are now accepting in this Trump 2.0 Doji MAGA world, of all these steps backwards, both on civil liberties, on just public safety relative to the weather, and on the economic factor of who can afford to build back or live in America when something negative happens.
Hang with me. We'll edit.
Back.
The win, bro. All right, keep
It's
going.
back.
Doji, civil
So
liberties.
yeah, civil liberties. So, my take is, we're wondering who can afford to build back when disaster hits. Is FEMA still a part of our government administration? Do we step in and help people in need when weather event happens, are we tracking the weather events? Who has the economics to build back? Or is the country just taking steps back on all of these topics, and we've kind of accepted it? The last thing that I want to throw in your court is now that we're deporting people who don't look the right way or didn't quote act the right way. In essence, the Trump administration is skating along that thin ice of basically not complying with the judicial order. So
Yep.
we're on that little tightrope of, have we had a constitutional crisis with these deportations? I would say yes, because the executive, they're kind of mocking the judiciary in
Right.
saying we deported them before it came in. Oh, but by the way, we think your ruling doesn't have validity anyway. It's a
Oh,
FU and a FU
well,
going forward.
and think about the ripple effect of these deportations and the randomness of them, right? Not like there are some people deserving of this, because there aren't. But like, really, you're going to grab a doctor from a prestigious Brown University nephrology unit and toss her onto the scrap heap of deportation? And now, what happens when the next great mind of medicine decides to, maybe I want to go to the United States. I've just been offered a job there. You know what? They got issues over there. And now we start seeing the quality of our medical care start to dwindle. Who wants that? Like, why would we opt for that? Like, why are we normalizing this behavior of Trump's? Normalizing just the thumbing of the nose at federal court rulings. We've got to stop normalizing this deviant and criminal behavior, because that's what it is, right? Like, in normal cases, we'd have had a marshal out already, right? If it wasn't the president. Wasn't the president, the marshals would have been given the order and said, okay, let's go and figure out the way we're going to adjudicate this. If he's not going to comply, we're going to take him into custody. That's what would have happened. That's what happens, but we don't see those stories on the news. And the other thing about Noah is, the MAGA crowd going to be able to put 37 deaths and disasters and home loss on the meteorologists? Like, are they that advanced in their thinking to understand that the TV meteorologists are actually scientists, because you have to get a degree in meteorology to actually go on television and forecast news. But the people helping them are part of the National Weather Service, which is a federal agency and federally funded. And so now, do we put the loss of lives? Do we put two and two together and get four on that side of the ledger? Now, on the blue side, people get it. But here in the South, Brock, I can tell you, we've been in some nasty storms. When I lived in Dallas, there were some storms that scared the daylights out of me. And the storms we get here are nothing to play with either. So, at what point do we, again, how many people have to die? We've been asking this about so many issues, right?
So
Is it going to be
is
next
it,
illegal
yeah,
abortion? Right?
it,
Like how many people
is
have
it
to die?
so is it just a thoughts and prayers thing? Like, oh, it hit and
Sure,
that's too bad. And now
sure.
everyone will go to
Yeah,
church and everyone who survived will say God spared them, but like not think about what the 37 who died or 44 who died, like they didn't get spared. So yeah,
right.
we're just less intelligent as a nation, and we'll have more unnecessary deaths, and like you said, we won't have as good a health care, and ultimately quality of life and the length of life of Americans is going to decline. And like, I mean, we're
Right.
almost watching it in real time, just like we handled COVID worse than every country and had more deaths due to COVID because we didn't handle it, properly. So yeah, we're a country in decline. But gets us to the, sort of that next topic. We have a constitutional crisis. We have a Trump administration that's continuing to do negative things, cut at important services, and in essence act like a king and ignore the other branches of government. Swing that
Exactly.
all the way
And
around to Democrats in disarray with Chuck Schumer
huh,
after doing his vote out saying that not only is the party behind him, but the party is unified. And it's basically a
nope.
false and false, right? A no and no.
Right.
And,
Right.
there's increasing voices that he needs to be removed is how, and I just don't understand how he can stay in the seat. Like
Yeah.
what he's saying is bullshit. He's trying the gaslight game, but I don't think it works on the left, right? Like we don't buy it.
Right.
Like we know he
Right.
doesn't have people behind him, and we know that he can't lead because he doesn't have the followers anymore.
Right. And let's be honest about it. Let's be frank. He's never been a dynamic leader. Right? He's always been kind of the de facto leader. And now I even saw on social media today how many people think that AOC is now the leader of the Democratic Party. And it was a resounding yes when you look at the comments. So, I think we're moving it away from the old school leadership, do things by the book, because Republicans ain't doing things by the book. I mean, just think about, they're not even doing things that are decent. Think about the spending bill that didn't have any money in it for rebuilding homes in California after the fires. And a large number of those homes happen to be African American homes, right? And that, but you still had some very affluent areas that were affected too. So now, you talk about quality of life, bro. California's got what? One of the top five economies in the world? Like not just the United States, but the
Yeah, I think
world.
it's officially number seven. I think I've always heard
Is
it
it?
was, yeah, number
Okay.
seven is what I've heard Newsom say.
Yeah. But I mean, you think about the quality of life when like who's got $1 million lying around to rebuild a shack in California, right? And if you had something nice, you're talking about three and a half, $4 bills. Like who's got that kind of money laying around?
Well,
Maybe
LA's going to be
people might.
LA's going to be sad because people aren't going to be able to build back, and apparently
Right.
they're empty lots. They're selling for cash now, but they have no hope. They're not getting. They're certainly not getting 100% on the dollar from their insurance if they're getting
No.
anything. So none of them can build back. So it's just going to become a more two-tiered society,
Yep.
right? So wealthy people are
The
going to
gap
buy up
widened.
all the land, and that whole group of people are going to move inland,
Right.
external. There'll be they'll
It's going to
diaspora
be a
of them.
mess.
They'll be gone, right? They'll
Right.
be gone. But Democrats keep taking steps backwards. Right now, we have a leadership fight, but it's
Yeah.
probably a good one because, like you said, I always look back
Yeah.
and go, how did Chuck Schumer ever become the head of the
Right.
Senate? Like,
Right.
there's no charisma, there's no dynamism there. Like, why did we how did we get here? And why are we
Right.
playing? How do we have someone who's so middle of the road and so easily can roll along with the MAGA crowd, right?
Right.
Like, and can't
He just
even
rolled
strongly
over.
articulate where he stands and, trying to position himself as strength and just no one buying it. Like,
Right.
the party, the ideas to me always feel like the ideas are to the left, but the party's always pulling to the center
The
because we're
center.
so
Yep.
afraid of the American people. We don't trust their racism, their sexism,
Yep.
their xenophobia. So therefore, we got to play this middle of the road problem solvers game. We water everything down. They even tried to water Kamala Harris's message down, right? It's probably, I would argue
Exactly.
it's why she lost. Play to the middle, play to the middle.
Yep.
They even they even pulled walls off the road because he was getting too, contentious, right? With they're weird, they're not like us. And then it was like, well, his
Right.
message, you know, it was resonating too much, or like
Yeah, had
we
to
gotta
rein him
rein it
in.
in. Everything has to be reined in. I'm hoping now because there's such defeatism, right? And
Right. Right.
such obvious losing that
Right.
there'll be a little bit more of a revolution on the left. I'm hoping for it. I'm hoping the Walls Barnstorming tour, the Bernie and AOC Barnstorming tours are going to light the spark, and
Right.
that's where the action is going to move to. Because
Right.
who's going to protest too? The middle of the road people? No, the people in the
No.
middle of the road, the status quo people are not going to be out protesting. They're going
Nope.
to be Chuck Schumering, right? So
Absolutely. So yeah, I think you're right too. And eh, if we're going to make any progress against MAGA, we're going to have to fight dirty like they do. Because that's the only thing they understand is the might and the will. And with a bully, you got to punch him in the nose. That's the only way it works. You've got to hit them over the head with a message that they can't stand. You got to box them in, Call it out like we see. Think how mad MAGA gets when you call them racist, right? Like, why are we not calling them racist when
every
they,
day. The
yeah,
policies are racist. Then you're
they're
racist. You're implementing a regime of racism. Like, okay,
absolutely
if you're not racist, everything you do is. So how do we differentiate it?
right.
Yeah,
Like,
you
like,
got to,
why
I
should
mean,
we not call it racism? I mean, when it's blatant racism, from everything from Arlington National Cemetery, where they're scrubbing the
yeah,
bios of Black soldiers and the information on Black and brown soldiers, to the education cuts, to, the cuts to HBCUs, the cuts all over the place are all about diminishing the others. The
there's
immigration
yeah,
policies are all racist.
gratuitous scrubbing of history. There even women's history. I mean, it's really becoming even more male and white. So yeah, it has to be talked about all the time. That's why it can't
All
just
the
be
time.
talking
Yep.
about income inequality and fighting the oligarchs. You're not just fighting the oligarchs because they have money. Fighting the oligarchs also because they're all old white guys who want to
Right.
have, like, in essence, a
Everything.
white power society. Like, you're not
Right.
fighting, you know, LeBron James. You're not
Right.
fighting, you're
Right.
not fighting Oprah, right? You're not saying
No.
Oprah's an oligarch, right? It's this Silicon Valley crew. It's Peter Thiel, it's Palantir guys, it's,
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, it's
Zuckerbergs.
Bezos,
Yep.
Mr. Complicity, right?
Yeah.
It's these same faces. And I'm with you. You got to hit them and just call them out on their actions,
Absolutely.
and pretty soon it won't. They'll just admit that it doesn't bother them because really,
Yeah.
in reality, they know it's true, and that's
Oh,
just what
yeah.
they just don't like when it's called out. I mean, I was
Right.
happy to hear that Musk is worried that if Tesla tanks, a lot of the debt that he's taken on, that he used Tesla as collateral, could collapse his empire. So, I
That'd be
mean, I'm only
awesome.
hoping that that there's just this mass
That'd be awesome.
boycott of Tesla, continues on a global basis, and that stock
Yes.
continues to tank, because I want to see that, that day. I want to see that
Yes.
pocketbook, you know,
Yeah.
wake up issue hit him over the head, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Why don't you go have a kitchen table talk now that your job is all fucked
But
up?
having said all of this, I still don't feel like enough is being done on the left. Not
No.
enough is being
No.
done.
And
And
you
now
see
if you have
the
to
latest with
infight over, I guess it's worth infighting over leadership, because it's one of the key boxes that we say is still not been solved, right? Who are the
Mm,
leaders on the left? Who is
right.
the leaders of the opposition to MAGA? And then
Right.
from the leaders, maybe we'll get the message. And if we have
Right.
the right leaders, we're more likely to get more action. So
Action.
all these things potentially could work in lockstep. But
So
there's no
that's
doubt
a
that
good thing.
Chuck Schumer has to be thrown, he has to be
Yeah.
sacrificed, right? He has to be thrown overboard. I mean, it
Yeah.
just has to happen.
He's got to go.
That
He's off the island. Yeah.
that
Off the island.
message has to be sent to the rank and file, that, like, yeah,
Right.
we're not going to accept this type of leadership anymore.
Right.
It's got to be higher energy. It's got to be more oppositional. We need fighters. And he opted out of it. So next man up, next man
Yep.
or woman up. I'd be
Yep.
happy
Because
to see Amy
the number,
Klobuchar,
the numbers are not lying. The numbers are telling us in the latest polling that the Democratic Party is polling below the president, who's at historic lows. That's it right there. That's all we need to know. So let's move on from Chuck Schumer. No more what the fuck, Chuck. You're out of here. Let's find a new de facto leader and let's move it out. And let's get there on April 5th, rather, and make some noise, some real noise that really shakes up. We got to continue with these boycotts because it's hurting Tesla. Target is really feeling the pinch. Their stock is plummeting. I think they've lost like $12 billion, or some obscene number I saw in a blurb this morning. So, these boycotts are working, and we got to continue to make these companies feel it. If you don't want to support democracy, we're not going to spend any money in your stinky businesses. And that's what's wrong, with these companies who don't embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right? Those aren't the top companies anyway. Yeah, Walmart, yeah, good prices or whatever. But you go into a Walmart, it's like I can't wait to get out of here. right? Like stuff's all on the floor. You're not gonna eat. I don't shop. I can't shop at a Walmart grocery store. I'm just not gonna do it. I did it in Texas because the fruit was fresh, right?
I didn't, there's no way. I mean,
But
Walmart is, you know, Walmart's
Walmart
been,
is Walmart. I
yeah,
get tires from Walmart. I'm not gonna get my tires and fresh bread at the same place. I just feel like I can't make it happen. But yeah, we've got to continue to keep the economic pressure up on them because that's the only other thing they understand too. Look at Trump's brand after his first presidency. It was shit, right? I mean, in his first presidency, at this point, names were coming off buildings. People were like, I don't want to be associated with this, right? Remember all the names of those leasing deals he had? Like people thought he owned the building. He didn't own the building. He
yeah,
just owned the naming.
he doesn't have a business anymore. His business is politics
Yeah.
and the corruption of politics. And
And
that's
stealing,
really,
right? His
and
business is theft.
it's the best business he ever found because we've allowed him
Oh,
to have it.
exactly.
We've allowed him to have it. And
Exactly.
now that he's stealing left and right and running scams and, basically treating our tax dollars like it's his bank account that he gets to dictate how it's spent
Exactly.
unilaterally, and we're allowing it to go on until we hit the streets and in big numbers. Like you said, April 5th is sort of then, the next big seminal moment on the calendar. I just hope there's a lot of noise made and a lot of ferreting out of leadership and message before we get to the 5th.
Yep. And indivisible.org is organizing it, and they've done a really nice job of rallying people. And again, um, shout out to all the influencers on social media who are amplifying these rallies and these protests because the mainstream media is not doing it justice.
They're not showing
We're
it. No.
regularly getting protests all over the
Yeah.
country, and they're not being shown. So, we're gonna
We'll
we're gonna have to take it to
have
the
to do it
street,
ourselves. It's basically
and
we're gonna
then
have to do it
yeah, have
ourselves.
a grassroots effort.
Like Mark Elias always writes, we're on our own. Sad to
Yep,
say, we're
we're
on
on
our
our
own.
own. Yep, and he's right. So, matter of fact, he's gotten under Trump's craw because Trump is name checking him. So he better make sure his tax situation is in order because I'm sure he's got an audit coming. You know. So, well, look, we're going to get the three things we're tracking, right? Leadership, messaging, and action. We should have some of that coming up in the next few weeks. So I feel like
I think we'll get a
with
shakeout.
this
Yeah.
big rally, some leadership could emerge. We could see Jasmine, AOC, maybe a Cory Booker, maybe a Mark Cuban, maybe a JB Pritzker, right? Like who emerges, from this gathering in the nation's capital, and that may be who we run with,
Yeah.
right? If
Who
we
wants
get
to be there?
somebody,
I'm curious. Who wants
yes,
to be there?
right,
wonder if someone has reached out and said, I want to be in front of that microphone. You're
right.
bringing the crowd. I want to
I
deliver a
want to speak.
message. I'm curious. I don't, I, that I'm going to have to do a little homework on that, how they're going to decide that. But I would think, I'm really curious to say who wants to be there, who's
Yeah.
itching to be out front.
Well, let's keep an eye on
We're
that,
going to
and
see.
maybe we can update that tomorrow night.
Okay.
All right, sounds good, buddy. Glad you made it nice and safe. Hope you and the wife have a great Southern cuisine type dinner. Enjoy the sun.
Yeah. Happy to be in Governor DeSantis land. Yep.
Yeah.
Keep feeling comfortable down here.
Hey, the good thing is you get to go home.